Costing around 5,000 euros, this bike sounds like an unskippable bargain to some people. And because it has the lowest seat height in the whole adventure segment, it is an unavoidable choice to many more. The question is the Himalayan just a pretty and convenient thing in the right place at the right time? Or does it stand on its own as a proper adventure bike? So, is it a toy or is it a tool? Hello adventurers, my name is Diogo Guerra and this is OFFroad-OFFcourse. This has been the most challenging motorcycle review I've ever done, and mostly because I've been changing my mind about this bike every single day. From hating it to considering buying one, this week I had it all. The engine is a 400cc, but it outputs the same power as a 250. And although it's not a very big bike, it weighs 200 kilos with half a full tank, which is basically the same as the top dogs of the off-road adventure segment. Is this just a morbidly obese 250, or perhaps just an obese 400 with asthma? Or is it maybe a malnourished big adventure bike that is missing a lung?
To this day, I don't know. But one thing you realize as soon as you start riding the Himalayan is that this bike has a way to make its weaknesses feel like advantages. For example, its underpowered but oversized engine gives the Himalayan a rather distinct feeling of sturdiness.
I love it. To me, it sounds like a very well-tuned diesel forklift.
And I mean this in a good way, as it translates in a smooth operation, not too heavy, which allows a very long maintenance interval, 10,000 kilometers between oil changes. The bike's weight is atrocious, yes, but it kind of matches its retro classic Indiana Jones-ish style, and again it becomes an advantage since it gives the bike stability, structure and comfort, setting it apart from all other low displacement bikes. Besides, the bike is short, so the weight hangs fairly low,
making the bike feel slightly lighter and a bit less intimidating than you would expect. Okay, but to see in fact if this bike is a toy or a tool, we need to test it in the three most common environments: city commuting, long distance traveling and off-road, of course. I think we all agree that the proper adventure motorcycle should also double as a workhorse, a practical motorcycle that you can use on a daily basis around town. Well, the Himalayan was developed in India to be used in India,
where motorcycles are indeed workhorses, and where we know that the roads are not particularly safe or good, like these ones here in Portugal. I did some tests and I can attest that the Himalayan does feel at home in these environments. The brakes are not brilliant, especially the front one, and overall the bike has a bit of a sluggish character, but it will certainly be much faster and practical than the average car in any commuting situation, so it gets the job done.
It's a practical bike, fuel injected, the clutch is very light and overall it's easy to use. The bike comes stock with a series of metallic bars, and you can also buy some extra ones, like the one on the rear for the luggage. The fuel consumption is something between 3 and 4 liters, which means that with a 15-liter tank you can go for about 400 k's, which is amazing. A few months ago I test-rided the CRF 250L, and around town I found it a bit faster, or at least a bit more zippier than the Himalayan. On the other hand, the Himalayan offers a bit more structure, more comfort, and it has more poise. So overall, I think this bike would do a great commuter. I got this bike from Tiago in Lisbon. Thank you, man. And I rode it for 100 kilometers back to Santarém, mainly on highway.
That's not any record-breaking distance, of course, but it was enough for me to test the Himalayan experience. In my opinion, the ergonomics are really well done. I felt quite comfortable sitting down, and I imagine a smaller rider would feel even better. I found the seat very cushy, but not too much. It really worked for me.
The wind deflector does a good job. I never felt any wind on my chest, just a little bit on the helmet, which is not a big tragedy because you shouldn't expect to ride faster than 100 km per hour. Actually, that's an interesting thing. This engine really loves to reach and stay at 100 km per hour, 5000 RPMs all the time. I guess with ideal conditions you could squeeze the throttle a little bit more and maybe get closer to the 125, maybe 130 km an hour, but that just feels like a senseless crime.
On the twisties, the bike felt good, with just enough torque to keep a pleasant speed throughout the turn, but what surprised me the most were the suspensions. They are quite simple, non-adjustable, but I think Royal Enfield did a great job tuning them, especially considering they also have to deal with some off-road.
Despite the low speed, I didn't feel any fatigue during the whole trip, which was quite surprising. This bike kind of feels like a cozy little place where you sit and you just watch the world fly around you. Sitting comfortably, feeling nice, just enjoying the view. It's kind of growing on me. I'm having a really hard time understanding and explaining what this bike is and feels like off-road.
Generally speaking, the Himalayan feels good. Actually, very good. Throw it down a simple unpaved road and you will be smiling till sunset. The suspensions do a good job dealing with the smaller and most common irregularities. The engine can keep up a decent speed forever, and its weight keeps it stable and planted. The limitations of the Himalayan only began revealing themselves on trickier roads, with tighter turns and more ground features. It becomes evident that this bike is not exactly like the dual sports I'm used to. It feels more like a scrambler, so despite having very decent ergonomics for standing up, the bike feels stiff, like you are riding a door with wheels. It misses the suspensions, the frame and the maneuverability of modern adventure bikes, so even with a low center of gravity, it's much harder to control than, for example, the Honda CRF 250L I tested a while ago. It's possible to ride the bike fast, of course, like I'm brilliantly demonstrating here. But you do it with no safety nets. If something goes wrong and you need to improvise, the bike won't have any resources left to help you.
You can only ride this bike fast off-road if you are a very experienced rider, who can avoid all the significant obstacles without fail. If you cannot do that, then the bike will force you to slow down, which is usually a bad thing. However, in the curious case of the Himalayan, with its low seat and reasonable torque, slow is where she thrives, and it's where she gets her fan base.
The bike doesn't deal well with aggressive riding. It feels limited and imprecise. But on the other hand, with its not so impressive but sufficient torque, it will slowly tractor its way up any hill, and thanks to its low seat, it lets you safely paddle your way through the most feared difficulties, like sand, loose rocks, or even mud.
So the Himalayan becomes irresistible to the new riders, because it offers them a solution that is in tune with their riding style, or lack of it. Now you must be wondering, how far can an Himalayan go? And what would stop it? Well, with reasonable off-road tires like this, the things that could stop this bike are... deep mud, probably, because the bike is heavy and has a low ground clearance, so you would get stuck in the muck. Deep sand, because the bike cannot keep the necessary speed to do it properly. Big embedded rocks, very steep and slippery hills. This thing is known to be a tractor, but still, it's just a tractor. So basically, all the things that would also stop a big and heavy adventure bike. Well, but this being said, I must admit that I am loving this bike. It's almost addictive. It works like a charm, it's comfortable, off-road is challenging and interesting and fun, and it kinda takes me back to my early days off-roading, where I could have so much fun with so little.
Due to its not-so-sporty attitude, the Himalayan makes the easy and mundane stuff feel interesting, fun and relevant again. And at the same time, it has a way to make the hard stuff feel more accessible, or at least inconsequential, since you can prevent the bike from falling and getting damaged most of times. It brings a bit of innocence back to the off-road world, and I kind of enjoy that.
You know, but that also gets me thinking. If we praise the Himalayan for, in a way, sucking so much that it makes it fun, then why don't we get an even worse motorcycle and have even more fun doing even smaller things? Why don't we do like Ed March and get a C90 and go around the world? Or why don't we strap a motocross tire to one of these and go nuts? I'm just throwing the questions out there, I don't really have an answer. I even thought about ways of improving the Himalayan, but I really can't. If you increase the power, then all the other problems will become worse. If you increase the ground clearance, the center of gravity goes with it. If you improve the suspensions, then the bike will become dull and you need more power. And if the bike could go on a diet and lose some weight, then it would lose its character, its traction and its comfort. And if you increase the top speed, then this will become useless, maybe the suspensions will feel too unsafe, the brakes will not be enough, and blah 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 blah. There is a thing that concerns me though. In many occasions I felt my feet touching the ground, both on-road and off-road. So I really recommend that if you guys are riding these bikes, to wear proper boots. Okay, and to wrap up this review, let me try to summarize it. So I felt this bike very good in the city for city commuting. For traveling, it's a very interesting bike, it's very comfortable, but you have to keep in mind that you have a speed limit of 100 km per hour. As for the off-road, I would say it's either a very useful toy or a very playful tool. Okay guys, and now I'm done. Thank you all for watching. I hope this video was useful to you in any way or entertaining, and if so, please don't forget to like, to subscribe, to hit the thingy and to share. Share this video with one of those friends that believes that the Himalayan is going to solve all his problems, and maybe it will prove him wrong. Or right, who knows. See you next week and happy rides!